Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Imavision's session on the future of automotive sensing. I'd like to introduce to you Patrice Roulet and Simon Thibault, who will be leading this Tech Focus session this afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Patrice Roulet. I'm happy to spend this time with you and introduce you the future of sensing technology for automotive. I'm with Simon Thibault, we will cover this session. And so if you have any question, you can write the question in the chat, and we will, after the session, we will run a Q&A to answer to all of your questions. So basically, we will talk about two types of cameras, so conventional camera and LiDAR cameras. So the camera are very key. Everyone knows that the camera are very key for automotive sensing today. And there is more and more cameras, and they help to capture the surrounding of the vehicles and in some extent, lead to take decisions. So I won't spend too much time to talk about the benefits of the camera and the downside of the camera, because I guess everyone is aware of those different benefits and drawbacks. It was covered in multiple sessions. So let's discuss more about what is a camera and what are the key features. So, and then to move more on what is interesting us today, it's for the lens part. Simon is our principal optical designer. He's also a professor at Laval University, spending 25 years in lens design with a lot of contribution in this area. So we hope that the two of us will be able to cover the innovation in optics and what is happening now in optics for automotive. So the camera is optics, sensor, and image signal processor. We don't spend too much time on sensor and image processor, but more on the optics. And up today, the optics are ranked by different KPIs: MTF, f-number, relative illumination, field of view, and distortions. So it was always, the optics was always measured like this, and we realized that we need to use those KPI and make those KPI evolve to answer to the demand of the automotive sensing. So just to remind you, what are those KPI and what is, for example, the MTF on the upper left corner. So it's the difference in sharpness. So a lens with a low MTF create a blurry image. A lens with a high MTF create a more sharp image. Then also the chromatic aberration. So, it's the way that all the color are spread in the image. And you can see in these examples, lens with quite bad chromatic aberration. So you can see the color spreading from black to white, and the lens with a good chromatic aberration. So with a good control of the chromatic aberration. Another KPI, but impacting the image quality, is the relative illumination. So a lens with low relative illumination means that there is a departure between the quantity of light on the center of the image with the corner of the image. A lens with high relative illumination, there is not too much difference between the center and the corner of the image regarding the quantity of light entering in the system. And this leads to also good quality lens and bad quality lens, especially in wide angle, where the relative illumination is very key. So here you can see a zoom view of the corner, and if there is not too much light, there is not too much signal, and that's lead to a noisy image. And the last component is the f-number. So the f-number is the quantity of light entering in the complete system. And depending the f-number, you have more energy or less energy entering in the system and hitting the sensor. So you can see here that from the f2.2 to the f1.9, we gain 34% of light. So means that in low light condition, the system will perform better because it gets more energy, more light. entering inside the system. But there is one KPI that we did not touch yet here, is the distortion. So usually the distortion is perceived as a bad thing, as an aberration, but in this talk you will see how we can use the distortion to spread the pixels on the different way on the image sensor. So this is a very basic examples between two types of wide-angle lens, the traditional wide-angle lens or fisheye lenses, and on the right and on the left, the panomorph wide-angle lenses. And the difference is with the panomorph lenses, by design, by optical design, we use the distortion to magnify some part of the field of view. So in this case, it's the first degree of freedom that offer panomorph lenses. And you can see the car here on the border compared to the traditional fisheye. So on the sensor, we have more pixels to cover this area of interest compared to the traditional fisheye. So this is one way to control the distortion, to spread the pixels in certain areas to satisfy the requirement of either human vision or computer vision. If we go to a zoom section of this area, so we can see that on each white line represents 10 degrees. So here we can see that we have more pixels per degrees due to the distortion. And after that, applying a software processing, rectifying the image, since we have more pixels on the sensor to cover this area, that's lead directly to a better quality with the panomorph lens compared to the traditional wide-angle lens. So this is the first degree of freedom that is offered by controlling the distortion by lens design with panomorph lenses. Another example for in-cabin monitoring, where the lens is placed on the ceiling of the car, nearby the light, the center light. And you can see the difference between traditional wide-angle lens and panomorph lens again, where the magnification is really placed where the people face are. So here we can barely see the people faces on the traditional wide-angle lens, where with panomorph lenses, we can clearly notice the people faces. And if we rectify the image, so meaning straightening the line, removing the distortion, and create, I would say, a regular view by software, we can see that since we have more pixels to define the faces, we have a better result after rectification. So this first degree of freedom by lens design allows us to create different patterns. So the one we have seen in multiple examples up to now, where we magnify the periphery of the image. So there is more pixel per degree on the border of the image compared to the center. At the opposite, we can create completely different pattern where we magnify the center of the image compared to the border, having more pixel per degree in the center and less pixel than per degree on the border. So in this case, that allows us to create lenses that capture super wide field of view, but with enabling also to capture objects in the center at a longer distance, or increasing the speed of by increasing the speed of the car, you can ensure that you can still capture object far away, take the right decision at the right time. And there is a third pattern that we call the mid-zone, where we can put the emphasis in the 45 degree of the field of view. So right in the middle here, where we have more pixels per degree. One example of application using these techniques is for front camera or back camera, where we want to create different augmented zone by lens design. So in this case, we increase each side of we increase the resolution in each side of the image and on the center compared to the mid zone here. So we can kind of put three camera in one, capturing a super wide angle field of view, plus having those three areas where we have larger resolution or bigger resolution. Another degree of freedom is for the module assembly, where we can offset the lens image footprint on the sensor. So the circular image represents the footprint, the image footprint of the lens. So the lens creates this image, and by moving the sensor scanning area. So for example, here we put the sensor scanning area right in the middle of the image, and we focus on the sensor. But by offsetting this area, we can increase the resolution and maximizing or optimizing the resolution on the side view of the camera. So it's another degree of freedom that we can use to capture the scene with the right amount of pixels by changing the design of the module and offsetting the sensor. The last one, and the one that is really the key focus of this talk, is the freeform anamorphic design. So here, again, you can see the traditional wide-angle lenses, and each traditional wide-angle lenses create a circle image on the sensor. By using freeform anamorphic components, we can first spread the pixels on the sensor in a different way. So it's kind of, we are by design stretching the image footprint on the sensor by optical design. So we use asymmetric component to create this type of effect on the sensor. And doing this, we can gain 33% more pixels by only applying this freeform lens design technique to a wide-angle lens. Another way to use it is to disconnect the horizontal field of view from the vertical field of view. With the traditional wide-angle lens, which are rotationally symmetric, we have to live with a proportional field of view on horizontal and vertical axis. In this case, using freeform anamorphic lenses, we can disconnect the horizontal field of view from the vertical field of view and stretch the image in the vertical direction to focus, for example, on the horizon. So we have 180-degree horizontal field of view by 90-degree vertical compared to 135-degree field of view with traditional wide-angle lens. And the way we do it, and maybe Simon, you can give a little bit more details about this type of anamorphic freeform lens design, where we combine multiple elements to achieve this result.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Patrice. Yeah, what you saw actually on the screen is a lens that have been designed mostly 15 years ago. This lenses use those freeform optical component, toroidal surfaces and cylindrical surfaces also, and with this what we call a D-cut to make the alignment more easier. At that time, the alignment process was not as good as today, so we have to come up with some innovative way to deal with the alignment. And so at that time, of course, freeform was not the word very popular in optics. It came a little bit later, but even at that time in 2005, 2006, design of freeform lenses have been done and successfully for this example of lenses, which is a miniature lens with 180 degrees field of view. And the image you saw on the right was a lens fabricated for the automotive industries around 2008, 2009, I think, using also freeform component inside and based on this D-cut shape. So it was very a test at that time, but it just to show that today's this kind of technology can be used with success with any problem. It's more than 10 years ago that some first tests have been done, and that's very great for the industries. You can go, Patrice.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So to summarize, in short, by lens design, so these panomorph lenses allow to capture super wide field of view, so more than 80 degrees up to 220, 240 degree field of view. And especially this with a lot of flexibility in the field of view design, because we can disconnect the horizontal and the vertical field of view if it's needed, focusing on the horizon, for example. We can combine that with what we call targeting the resolution, so playing with the distortion to magnify some area of interest. So combining this customization of field of view plus the targeting resolution together, we have a lot of flexibility to design a super wide-angle vision system. and to provide good pixels for human vision or computer vision. And of course, this type of design can be adapted to automotive grade requirements for very rude environmental conditions. So we perfect this technique for RGB cameras, and we realized 2 years ago that the LiDAR cameras has also some benefits of using this type of techniques. So here we have a slide that wrap up the similarity and difference between RGB cameras and LiDAR. So I'm used to ask the question to automotive people: do you think that the LiDAR is a camera or is not a camera? So maybe Simon, what is your opinion on this? Is it a camera or is it not a camera?
Yeah, that's a good question, and so somehow it depends what definition you have for a camera. But as long as you can do an image, we can say that it's a camera. So you can use a LiDAR as a camera to produce a kind of image of the scene you saw. So that's my answer. But I will be very happy to have an answer from the audience.
Yeah, so you can let your opinion in the chat, and we can discuss at the end of the talk if LiDAR is a camera or not a camera. Could you tell us a little bit more about what components you use in LiDAR camera design, especially if you want to make it super wide angle on horizontal direction and very narrow on vertical direction, which is a trend right now. We see some spec for LiDAR, which is 120 horizontal by 30 verticals. So could you tell us a little bit about which component you are using and what are the challenges in the design and in the manufacturing of those type of lenses?
Yeah, that's a good question, and part of the answer was shown in a previous slide with the wide angle lens and all this wide angle stretching you shows, because as you said, we want to increase the horizontal, the horizontal field of view and keep it smaller, the vertical field of view. And the idea behind that is first of all because that's the region of interest, and secondly, you have to move or to scan this region, so you have to optimize this. So to do so, freeform optics or somehow some anamorphic between the horizontal and the vertical axis is the way to go. And those surfaces are always, or still today, challenging to manufacture. The things evolve a lot during the last few years. We come in the consumer market, you have more and more anamorphic or freeform lens now on the market that coming in the in some phone with cinematic views and things like that. So the message we got from this industry is really that companies are pushing now to have mold that are able to mold these freeform lenses, and it's a good news for the automotive industries and particularly for the LiDAR, because you can now manage a more complex lens design, because you will know that you will have an opportunity to build this at a cost which is quite similar at the cost you can have in the market for mass production using mold, even in glass or plastic. So now with these new trends, there is option on the market. Of course, you need probably to get a little bit a know-how how to design those lenses, because now it's a little bit different than standard lens, and there is many, I will say, difficulties when you design with freeform, because you have to be sure that you will have an image quality which is very good everywhere, or at least to have enough energy coming from everywhere. And the problem comes from the what we call in the lens design, the pupil distortion that produce maybe some artifacts or some error. So you really need good lens designer to take care of this. As long as you are aware, it's easy to design, but that's something that lens designer are not familiar with, can have a huge impact on the overall lens design at the end. But as long as the lens designer or your team is able to manage that, you can come up with very, very innovative solution with the minimum number of lenses, certainly suitable for automotive application, as any other type of lenses. That's good news.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Yeah, so this is just to wrap up what freeform panomorph lens technology can enable for LiDAR applications. So we can go super wide field of view, horizontal field of view, more than 100, and by maximizing also the resolution on the vertical axis, so reducing the field of view. So we can disconnect the horizontal and vertical field of view, and so this type of techniques that we mature for RGB camera can be used also for LiDAR. One last topic that we would like to cover on this talk, and it's not related to lens, but it's more related to the usage of the lens. And we were asking ourselves, is panomorph technology or panomorph lens can help to take the right decision or can improve the perceptions? So we conducted a study in collaboration between Immervision and Laval University, where we use different type of panomorph lenses and traditional wide-angle lenses that we call fisheye. And we run some neural network algorithm to see if the panomorph lenses can help and can provide a better accuracy at the end of the pipeline. So we use a challenging CNN application. So the application was the depth perception from a single frame. And we use this type of CNN. You have an overview of the CNN on the upright of the slide. And we use the CNN to rank the accuracy depending if we use fisheye, panomorph with augmented resolution in the center, like kind of humanized type of design, or panomorph with augmented resolution on the periphery. And conducting this research, so first we had to create a tool to create the data set to train the neural network, because there is no data set today with panomorph lenses. So we use our lens design skills to create simulation tools to create this data set using existing data sets. Then we train the different network with different data sets taking care of the lens parameters. And we observe that using those neural networks, we have better accuracy or the best accuracy in the area of interest. So it was an intuition at the beginning, but the research proved that. And so the panomorph lenses, this specificity to bring the pixel in the area of interest and the best pixel in the area of interest, help the neural network to have a better accuracy in this area of interest. So it's not only having more pixels is not only better for human vision, it's also good for computer vision and CNN, where we have a better result in the area of interest. I will try to play a video now, just to show you the result. I don't know if yeah. So here it's frame by frame. We assembled that as a video, but it's frame by frame, and we can see on the left the RGB image, and on the right the depth image. So white is far object and black is close object. And so this is obtained using a single frame depth perception from the CNN with panomorph lenses. Just a few words about Immervision to conclude, very quick. So we are a company combining image processing engineers and lens designer. We focus on 3 areas: super wide angle lens design with panomorph lens design for cameras and also LiDAR. We also do image processing. So we process the pixel to deliver the best pixel for either human vision or computer vision. And we have IP block in between we call sensor fusion. So we combine within the pixel of the image data from different sensors like IMU, GPS, to use the image or the video as a single conduit or a single a way to transmit the data from end to end, from the cameras to the screen, or from the camera to the computer vision. We offer a wide range of services to our customers, from lens design, mechanical design, imaging pipeline design. We support also our customers during the prototyping phase and the manufacturing phase. And to do so, we use a design thinking approach where we like working with our customer open book. So we become kind of part of their R&D team, where we co-design and we co-explore and we co-materialize their ideas. Thank you, everyone, for assisting this talk, and we are looking forward to have questions. I invite Simon because last time I had a very deep technical question, so Simon will help me to cover those.
Good idea. Have we got any questions for Simon or Patrice? If you want to put them in the chat box on your right-hand side, that would be great. They asked the question during the presentation, is LiDAR a camera? So maybe that would be a good topic to kick us off.
So for me, it's a camera. because there is a lens and there is a sensor, and as Simon said, we can get an image out of it. Of course, there is a lot of image processing happening in between, but at the end we have an image. Even if it's a 3D image, it's an image. So for me, it's a camera.
Yeah, we've got a question here from Stefan, who's saying, how close is such a lens to manufacturing? What is the cost impact on the lens compared to a regular lens?
So I will take this, Simon, and then you can complement with more details. So how close is such a lens to manufacturing? Is very close, because we already manufacture multiple lenses like this for different applications. We have lenses like this flying in Airbus, in Boeing airplanes, in security. We have lenses like this for broadcast cameras. We did one for automotive in 2009 for backup camera. So it's already in there. It's less famous than traditional lenses, but it's already there, and we can already use these technologies mature already. And what is the impact on the costs? So the impact on the cost come more on the dissymmetry because of the alignment. So Simon explained a little bit about it. At that time, when we designed the first one, the active alignment was not so popular. So the way to align the lens and the sensor automatically. So we have to design very specific mechanics to allow the alignment, rotating the lens to align with the sensor. But now, most of the module vendors has active alignment technique. So it's not too much difference in terms of cost. Maybe, Simon, you want to add some point on this part?
Yeah, the only thing is as long as you design and you have a freeform lens or a toroidal surfaces, it's the manufacturing will be done by molding technology, either glass molding or eventually plastic injection. For plastic injection, there is no issue because the mold actually it will require high precision mold, but most of the optics use a high precision mold for injection, for plastic injection now with micron level or sub-micron level accuracy. And for glass molding, again, glass molding is done with very particular mold, and the mold costs, as the cost will come from the type of machine or equipment that will build the mold. And actually, most of the equipment I already have the 4-axis or 5-axis system to build this kind of mold. So the cost is really on the number of lenses. So you will see maybe an increase of, let's say, maybe 10% or something like that for the optics. Again, it depends how many units you want, because there is a point where the number of units, it doesn't make any difference at the end.
Have we got any further questions to follow up from Stefan at all? Let's see, doesn't look like it. Okay, well, thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the future. If anyone does have a specific question for Simon or for Patrice, do head to the community and you can find them and message them directly there. I've put a link back to the main agenda page in the chat session if you'd like to head back there and select your next session to join. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Alice.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.